So good morning, everyone. Welcome to our second edition of Gender Diversity in an Altered World virtual conference. So we had a large conference in July where we focused on how do we look at gender diversity under the new lens in a post-COVID world. So last time our focus was around building a culture, focusing on policies, relooking at policies itself, and how that can help us accelerate the Charter for Gender Diversity. This session, we have a focus on technology. The post-COVID situation, we've seen that over 55% of the job losses which have happened comprise of women. Due to the current COVID situation, we've also seen that 3 out of 4 companies are going to accelerate their AI adoption and AI journey itself. And we see just a 28% representation of women in the STEM field. So it is now even more important on how we are looking at technology as an enabler for gender equality, and what are some policies which are required on that front, what are some changes in approach which may be needed, what are some frameworks that we need to look at, among other things, is what we aim to cover today. So we're bringing together industry thought leaders, women professionals, practitioners, who will share their perspective on how we need to relook at this entire journey today. So to deliver the keynote today, we're happy to have Vasuta Agarwal with us. Vasuta is the Managing Director for Asia Pacific region at APAC-InMobi. She's responsible for the P&L, strategic partnerships, business for India, Southeast Asia, Japan, Korea, and ANZ markets. Prior to this, she was the Vice President and General Manager for India business at APAC-InMobi, driving consistent scale and growth for the last 3+ years. She has been featured among the top 50 influential women in media and marketing in India for 3 consecutive years since 2018. She has been with APAC-InMobi, one of the first startups and unicorns to go global from India for over 8 years, and has worn many hats in her time there, from the founder's strategy to product to business roles. Before APAC-InMobi, she was at McKinsey as a management consultant and with Intel as a chip design engineer. She's a graduate from BITS Pilani and Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore. Vasuta, really nice to have you with us here today. Thank you for taking your time. Over to you.
Thanks, Karthik. Thank you for that introduction, and good morning, everyone. Great to be here. Karthik, if you could give me
Yes, I've made you the host.
Okay. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, it's visible.
Yes, it's visible.
Okay, great. So good to be here, everyone. I think, like Karthik introduced, today we'll be talking more about the role of technology when it comes to gender diversity in an altered world. Before we dive into the actual role of technology, I thought it's important to take stock of where we stand today with the current pandemic crisis, right? And what that means for gender diversity. If you look at the current scenario, women have been particularly exposed to this crisis, whether it is healthcare workers or the sectors which are hit. Women are pretty much at the forefront during this pandemic crisis. Almost 70% of the global healthcare workers are actually women, right? Which means that they are fighting this from the front lines. In terms of the sectors which have been massively hit, like hospitality, retail, leisure, travel, a majority of employees in these sectors are actually women, and these sectors have been hit the most by the lockdowns across countries. Similarly, when it comes to the part-time workforce, there are a lot of women. Almost 57% of part-time employees are actually women. And obviously, with the current economic crisis, there is a harder hit to part-time roles and the temporary workforce, which creates a larger impact for women. And lastly, I think just the household and childcare responsibilities have actually gone up. there has always been a disproportionate skew when it comes to shouldering these responsibilities that has actually increased now during the course of the pandemic. And this is all actually leading to sort of the pandemic actually impacting women in a much, much bigger way. So, moving to the next slide, right? If you see here, women are disproportionately represented in industries which are actually expected to decline in 2020. So, if you look at these black circles here, they actually represent female dominated sectors which have been impacted more during COVID, right? So whether it's retail, accommodation and food services, even manufacturing, these sectors have been the worst hit. The dark blue ones are, sectors which have been hit, which have male-dominated jobs. So while the whole economy has been hit, there is definitely a higher impact on women, right? When we break this down further, I think earlier Karthik referred to the job loss scenario. If you look at this, right, this data has been taken from actually a McKinsey report on the future of work and what are some of the regressive effects of COVID-19 on gender parity. Some of these stats are really, really shocking, right? And they do create a big, big exposure for women. The vulnerability to job loss is almost twice as high for women than men in the current scenario, right? While women represent 39% of the global employment, they actually represent 54% of the overall job loss, which links back to the earlier point that I was making around sectors and part-time workforce, and which are rare, have more women in them. Similarly, if you look at the last graph on the left, women do almost 75% of the world's unpaid care work, right? Which is looking after the children and the aged in the family, doing the cooking and the cleaning and so on. And that number actually goes as high as 80 to 90% in South Asia, which includes India, of course, and the Middle East and North Africa. So some of these things actually, are impacting women more, and they will continue to do that in the next couple of months, as we come out of this crisis. Interestingly, or rather unfortunately, I was reading through that there's actually, this World Values Survey, which was done, and almost half the respondents in countries like South Asia and Middle East, North Africa, actually agreed that men have more right to a job than women when jobs are scarce, right? So there is also a hardcore belief system which also underlies, or is underlying all of these things, which creates even more of a gender disparity issue. So really this was to frame the problem and where we stand today. I think we all know that the current pandemic has been extremely hard on people on all fronts. But if we look at some of these data points, these statistics, the surveys which have been done in the last couple of months, it's clear that women are much more, exposed and at the and probably worse off than anyone else during the course of this pandemic. And what is important is that all of us know that this pandemic crisis, while it is of course a huge health crisis, it is also a huge economic crisis for the world, right? Not just for India. And if we are to get out of this, then women also need to be doing better, right? Because I really liked this quote from the IMF managing director, which said, "When women do better, economies do better." Right? So if women are better represented in jobs, if women are seeing healthier employment rates, if they have to do lesser unpaid care work, all of these things would actually lead to economies doing better. So a key part of also coming out of this pandemic crisis is to tackle the economic crisis. And for that, we need to ensure that women across the world, across the country, are doing better as we come out of this. So with that, I'll dive into more of the role of technology and how can technology help in gender diversity in a post-pandemic world, right? In this sort of new altered reality that all of us are starting to live in or will have to live in the next couple of months. So technology, if you see, pretty much has a role to play in many aspects of our work lives, whether it's in the whether it's in the workplace, whether it is in the sort of policies, but really it needs to start at the very beginning, right? And I found there's some interesting again data about this when it comes to especially STEM careers and STEM education, right? Which is essentially science, technology, engineering, and mathematics as disciplines and as careers, because technology needs to get ingrained in our lives from the start for us to over time imbibe it, and for it to also play a role in our work lives and in the workplace. So if you look at it, India actually has a pretty healthy ratio of graduates who are coming in STEM disciplines. It's about 43% of the graduates who come in STEM disciplines, but and it's top of the list, right, in all the countries. But if you look at the right list, the right side, actually only 14% of those then actually get into STEM careers, right? So we are educating our women when it comes to STEM disciplines, but we're not able to help them make a career out of it, right? And so out of the almost 3 lakh engineers, scientists, technologists in India, only 14% of them are actually women. And there are multiple reasons contributing to it. There is lesser pay, so disparity in pay for women. There is lesser recognition. There is lesser publication of the research and the work and so on. So all of this contributes to women not taking up careers in the STEM fields, right? And there is, of course, some initiatives that the government is taking. The Ministry of Science and Technology has said that it will actually start ranking educational institutions based on their gender parity ratios when it comes to the faculty and other things. But yeah, only time will tell whether some of these things will actually help improve our women getting more and more into STEM careers. The other, point which I thought is very important when it comes to technology is the role that it plays in the digital and financial inclusion of women. Right? I think all of us have now experienced it, and we know that, for example, access to essential services, right, whether it's food, groceries, even health services, has moved online, and it makes it hard to manage your day unless you have access to these digital devices and digital infrastructure. Similarly, for those of you who are working remotely, who are working, on online work platforms, again, there is a need for, technology and digital services to play a role there. Um, in fact, even a financial, stimulus and help programs for women, even in India, which are targeted towards women, they actually rely on the digital identification of an individual, right, for them to be sort of recognized and accepted for financial stimulus. So all of this basically leads to the fact that we need to ensure that technology plays a role when it comes to an inclusive digital identification system for women, whether it comes to digital infrastructure and literacy for women, or even financial help and funding for, say, women micro entrepreneurs who are in the rural areas. So all of these become extremely important, and technology has a key role to play here. Moving gears a little bit to the more corporate world, and how technology can actually help promote diversity and inclusion in the workplace. I think it starts right from the recruitment stage, right? If you see, the moment that you draft a job description, making sure that that job description itself is inclusive, that it attracts diverse candidates, that it does not have any gender biases in the way it is worded, it becomes important, right? So, and there are now AI powered tools and solutions which can help you identify some of these biases and gaps. Similarly, if you talk about the actual recruitment process, sometimes there can be again biases there, right? Unconscious biases possibly, and again there can be tech solutions there which help match the skills and talents and remove other factors from the picture. so that there is less bias in the recruitment process itself. Even things like I was talking earlier about, the financial aspect of it, right? Highlighting disparity in compensation. We all know that, there is oftentimes there could be a difference in pay uh, on different variables for different roles, gender disparity in compensation, and some of the analytics and insights platforms which are related to compensation and benefits can actually highlight these disparities, right? And this becomes a key tool for both HR business partners, the rewards teams, and managers to sort of look into these insights and figure out, there is some kind of biases that they're creating. So technology does have a role to play in some of these situations, and can actually help enable us to be less biased and create a more equitable workplace. Similarly, I think beyond recruitment, which I briefly touched upon, I think there is a role that technology plays through the life stage of an employee, especially a women employee, right? Right from retention going all the way, to growth. Recruitment, I thought there was an interesting example to share where, there are organizations, for example, like Goldman Sachs, which are actually using robo interviews to cast a wider net across candidates, right? So that they are not biased in their recruiting. So they actually complement that with other interviewers, and actually enables hiring managers to disregard other factors, but actually match candidates with the candidates who've then done well in the organization. So that's a tool or a technology that they're using. Similarly, when it comes to retention, I think we've all seen the power of communication technologies, the absolute importance of VCs and Zoom calls, and high quality broadband requirements and so on, because just to sort of get through your day, do justice to your work, you need these technologies, right? Similarly, there's an interesting concept where we talked about how a lot of the essential services like grocery shopping or healthcare services or even childcare services have moved online to digital services, and there are a lot of these time-saving apps which exist. And if companies can, subsidize some of those costs for women, then that becomes a good support mechanism for women, right? So it's a combination of both technology and also, how you combine it with some of the policies of an organization. Lastly, I think on the growth, I think the growth aspect is very, very critical, right? I think all of us have seen data and analysis where a lot of women enter the workforce. They're there in, the early stage and even middle stage of their careers. But over time, because of different, life events, whether it's marriage or, having a baby, they drop out, right? And therefore, the long-term growth becomes a challenge, right? And there are again organizations which are starting to use technology, whether it's in the form of digital social networks or online, L&D programs, that they're trying to help these women grow, continuously develop their skills, learn, and so on, right? A good example is of Renault, which is an auto manufacturer, right, which has something like this, and they actually provide mentoring and training and so on to help women on work on their leadership skills. There is an online sort of social network for women to discuss their issues and actually discuss equality initiatives. So it was an interesting example of how technology is being used to help grow and provide support to women in their careers. So, if you see, essentially, I mean, technology obviously can be a great enabler. It can provide a strong, boost to the existing efforts and policies of any organization. But it alone cannot do that, right? It has to be coupled with obviously other support measures that advance the effort. So this is some of the things that we talked about, right? Communication technologies, time-saving apps, digital social networks, robo interviews, and so on. So all of these are great enablers and are being used to good effect in organizations across the world. And of course, technology will have even a stronger role to play as we move into the new world in remote working setups and so on. I thought that it was important. I came across two examples of companies which I thought added to the strength of this discussion today. One was around, the policies aspect in some of the technology companies. I think, given that, companies in the technology and digital sector are already exposed to technology in a big way, they can use that to very, very good effect and probably more easily. And this is an example of a company, Bumble, which is actually a dating app in the US, actually co-founded by the previous co-founder of Tinder, another dating app. And actually, they have policies where, women represent more than 80% in employees, executive team. The kind of flexibility, parental leave policies, healthcare policies that they offer is absolutely, what helps these women stay, grow, and learn. So it becomes very important to drive some of this from the top down. If you see the founder and CEO of Bumble, right, Whitney Wolf, obviously she is a woman herself, and obviously she understands the psyche, right, and understands that it is women need to grow, women need to go after what they deserve, whether it is growth, whether it is roles, whether it is compensation, and really sort of drives that very top down. So I do think gender balance policies driven top down have a big role to play along with technology. Another interesting example is closer to home, which is actually, of online and social commerce and how it's playing a big role in women empowerment, right? If you see with the whole geo effect, there are hundreds of thousands of people online now, and with the prevalence of WhatsApp, it's pretty much become, an explosion of people online. And Misho, which is a social commerce platform, actually empowers more than 2 million Indians to become entrepreneurs without any need for capital. And 70% of them are actually women, homemakers, mothers, students, right, who've had to possibly drop out of the workforce and want to start their own business. So it's a very, very interesting concept for women empowerment. And this is now getting replicated across multiple digital platforms and companies who are coming up in this space. But it's how technology has, of course, changed the life of many of these women to feel more empowered and independent. So, with that, I wanted to sort of maybe leave you with just these thoughts. I think, of course, it's a difficult time. Women are more, exposed when it comes to this crisis in terms of job losses, in terms of, the impact on their work lives. And there is a strong support system that they will need to get out of it. And technology absolutely has a strong enabling role to play, right? But I really found this quote to be very wonderful, in terms of leaving as a thought that while there is a lot of things technology can do, there is a lot, that as an individual that you can do as well, right? Which is not to really be phased by the failures or doubts, but continue despite them and keep moving forward. Yeah, so with that, I'll wrap it up. If there are any questions, and I'm happy to take those.
Thank you, Vasuta, for beautifully laying out the roadmap for the session today, talking about what the gaps are right now, how technology can play a key role in that, and even sharing a few live examples of where they're actually walking the talk. So I think that's quite inspirational, and I'm sure this dialogue requires a lot more time, a lot more aspects to focus on. I know we are doing injustice to just restricting it to a 30-40 minute, but the idea for us through the platform now is to start off these conversations and then take it forward in various formats, in various other forums as well, so that the more we amplify the voice, I think that's where we are going to still keep the charter moving forward. And thank you once again for your time and for championing the cause for gender equality as always. We definitely look forward to collaborating with you in future as well.
Thanks, Karthik. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Vasuta. Thank you. Thank
Bye.
you so much.
Bye.
Pleasure
Thank you.
hearing.